Hello, everyone. What's going on? My name is Rodney. If you already knew that, thank you so much for coming back and watching another live stream on Bleacher Report. It is Raiders Daily. We just had Momo and my partner in crime going Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. 3 great shows, and hopefully we can live up to that on this beautiful Thursday evening. I got to be honest with you, where I'm living, it's not beautiful. There's like a tornado outside my window or something. The winds are insane. So we're going to do our best to keep this thing rolling. But in case the winds get too crazy and I get cut off, that's why. I don't foresee that happening. But I haven't experienced wind like this in a long time. Just throwing that out there. We're knocking on wood. Knock on wood if you're with me. Shout out to JG. If you know, you know. The note is in the chat if you're watching live on Bleacher Report. Thank you so much for doing so. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, hit that like button and comment away as always. We got a lot to discuss here because we're kind of transitioning out of the OTA phase and into the training camp phase. I'm just making sure my window is closed. Okay, it is because I could feel that wind. And because of the idea that we're transitioning into the training camp phase, which is in, I think, a week, and I honestly might go to that if it's still in um, Las Vegas, because I know last year they moved to California, and I was like, AP, what a great move. And then, we win 4 games, and I think they're going to stay in Vegas this year. And if that is the case, I might go check them out. Maybe my dad, who's in the chat, will want to come with me, and maybe we'll go together. All that to say, there's a bunch of takeaways from OTAs that are going to lead us into training camp, some good and some bad. We're trying to be as unbiased as possible here. And we're going to discuss all those different takeaways because we've got an interview from John Spytek that was just on John Middlecoff's channel. If you don't know that channel, check it out. He does a bunch of great podcasts, like daily, sometimes twice a day, uploads about different NFL topics. And I guess he was boys with John Spytek, maybe from both their times working in Philadelphia. And he had him on for like an hour. And Spytek said a lot of interesting things about the type of person and player that not only we want to draft, but the way they evaluate talent is to make sure that they are good enough to justify the extensions that we give them and trustworthy enough to give them maybe a little bit more money than they've earned. So I thought that was interesting what he said. He also mentioned that we were trading or tried to trade for some quarterbacks that maybe people hadn't talked about. So I want to talk about that as well. Then we've got a couple articles here, biggest OTA takeaways, and then Max Crosby's thoughts on a couple rookies. And then we're going to vote on some polls here. So it's going to be a nice, fun show. Last week I was competing with the Eastern Conference Final, and now I'm competing with the NBA Finals. The Pacers are playing the Thunder right now. They're a historic underdog, minus 700. That's insane. I'm pretty sure when the Mavs beat the Heat, the Mavs were minus 175. Just to put that in perspective. And also the Raiders on their YouTube channel have premiered their Behind the Shield episode 2 right now. So we got a lot of competition, but we're going to do our best to charge ahead forward. So I'm not going to do an article to start. I'm going to do a couple notes I had from the Spytek interview that he gave today with John Middlecoff. Now, there was a lot of interesting things to take away, but I think the main things that I want to talk about here is contract extensions that he talked about. Because John asked him, oh God, they're both named John. John Middlecoff asked John Spytek, that year, I think it was 2022 going into 2023, 44 of your 53-man roster on opening day were people that Tampa Bay had drafted or signed as undrafted free agents. How is that possible? And John Spytek basically laid the groundwork for what I think they're doing here in Las Vegas. And he said, look, we draft guys or we sign guys that we think can play at a certain level. It's about need and it's about fit. But we also make sure that they are of the highest character. So when an Antoine Winfield Jr., so when a Tristan Wirfs, so when a Baker Mayfield is up for an extension, we have the utmost faith that they're going to put into work to earn the money that we give them. So that's what he said about how they were able to keep all their homegrown talent. Now, they lost some guys along the way. He talked about Jordan Whitehair, I believe, and Alex Kappa, who now is on our team, ironically enough. Because he said, look, you can't keep anybody. There's a hard salary cap. But the people that you are able to keep, you keep because of how well they've played, but also because of the type of person that they are. You've got 100% faith that Antoine Winfield Jr., that Baker Mayfield, that Chris Godwin will live up to the money that you give them. And they've proven that with Geno Smith good player to great player at some level there, like top 12-ish quarterback in the league. High value, integrity, character, maturity off the charts. Max Crosby, one of the best players in the National Football League, doesn't want to come off the field. First person in the building, last person out of the building. AJ Cole, I believe he's a man of faith, which in theory means that you have high integrity, high character. Best punter in the National Football League. Extension, 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 right? And that makes me think of a couple things. So first of all, last week I talked about a potential Tyreek Hill trade. I don't think that's going to happen, even if they got a good deal, because they don't probably appreciate some of the off the field criticism, and rightfully so, of a Tyreek Hill. Maybe there's a reason why they didn't draft Shedeur Sanders or want to go after Aaron Rodgers, because they just want guys that are all in. Like, that's what it comes down to. And Max Crosby, Geno Smith, AJ Cole, those are the type of guys who are going to get extensions. And we've talked about Colton Miller and Jacoby Myers. I think those two are also locks to get extensions. Now, Jacoby is the easy lock. He's still young. He's in his prime. Colton Miller, a little bit older than Jacoby, not that much older before the position. He feels a little bit older than Jacoby, and he has a little bit of an injury history. So they're going to have to evaluate that and wait and see. But people thought Colton Miller was going to skip out on OTAs. And it's the exact opposite. He was there every day practicing and training. He's got no guaranteed money left. He doesn't give a rip. He's there. And that's the type of people that fall in line with the Geno, with the Crosby, with an AJ Cole. So Spytek saying, and he said this about Genti too, it's like, yeah, okay, we could have drafted a running back later, but what we knew about Ashton Genti is this, is that he's an elite physical specimen and that he had a chance to leave Boise his senior year and go play for pick a team, Alabama, Ohio State, whatever, and get paid 3 times the amount in NIL money that Boise would have offered him. And what did he do? He stayed. He mentioned a time, now it's thundering and lightning outside. Hopefully we get through this. He mentioned a time where I think he said Ashton Genti and his family were living in Italy because his dad's a military guy. And they were moving to the United States, and they were like, hey, Ashton, where do you want to move to? And he was like, let's go to southern Texas. That's where the best football players are. I want to be the best. That's why they took Ashton Genti. So John Spytek has his finger on the pulse of the type of people to completely change the culture, and Pete Carroll fits perfectly with that mold. Now, there was also something very interesting that Spytek talked about. No worries, man. No worries. It's okay. You're here now. You could always watch the replay. There's an interesting wrinkle. I thought it was fascinating. I just thought it'd be kind of a fun thought exercise to talk about this, and I want to get people's comments after the fact on YouTube or live in the chat. John Spytek, when asked about Geno Smith, said, look, when me and Pete Carroll got this job, we said we would, leave no stone unturned in terms of who we're going to get at the quarterback position. We're going to look at every option. And we all know they tried to trade for Matthew Stafford, right? And it didn't work out that way. That would have been awesome, but I'm cool with Geno too. He said, I would be embarrassed to tell you some of the teams that we called to trade for the quarterback that they have starting for them. That's a very interesting nugget in that interview. And by the way, comment below right now in the chat if you could hear the weather outside, because then I'll turn my mic down a little bit and get it closer to my mouth so you don't hear it. If you can't hear it, it's totally fine. I don't think you can, but it is insane outside right now, so let me know down below. If it's bothering you, I'll turn it down a little bit. He said, I'd be embarrassed to tell you some of the players we tried to trade for. Now, obviously, we're not trading for Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, right? Or Justin Herbert. But who do you guys think are some of the teams that we called to try to trade to get their quarterback, or even just inquire about it? Was this after Lamar Jackson had already signed his extension? Probably, so it wouldn't be him. Could it be a Joe Burrow? Were they trying to play into Cincinnati's financial hardships and say, hey, is Joe Burrow available? Who else could have been out there that would have been an insane move to try to nab? No, I don't think it was Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But I just think that was an interesting thing that he threw in there right at the end. I'm trying to rack my brain for anybody else. Like, it wouldn't be Josh Allen, obviously. Like, who would it be? A team that couldn't get it done but has a good quarterback. Maybe Arizona for Kyler Murray. I don't know. That's interesting as well. Hello, Mom. How are you? I just thought that was an interesting thought experiment. I don't want to hear your guys' comments below. My guess is Joe Burrow, that they tried maybe sneakily to get Joe and it didn't work out, obviously. But what that does prove to me is that he's not lying. They will leave no stone unturned. So if you got any ideas besides Kyler as to who maybe that could have been, Jordan Love, no, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. I don't know. Tua, interesting thought experiment. Go check out that Middlecoff interview. It was really good with Spytech. Let's talk about the biggest OTA takeaways before we get into Max Crosby stuff, because we're going to start out maybe a little bit on the negative side of things, but transition to the positive. So I'm going to share this first article here. It's not a very long one, and then we'll hop into it. It is on Sports Illustrated by our guy Ezekiel. He says the Raiders OTAs have already confirmed one thing. There's actually three things in this article, which is interesting, but I think it all wraps up into one thing called the defense. This was yesterday. The Las Vegas Raiders will be a much different team this upcoming season. So let's just make sure we're still good. Yeah, we're still good. All right. He starts out by saying the Las Vegas Raiders have been productive this offseason by adding several players on both sides of the ball who should help turn things around. Organized team activities, OTAs, have given a glimpse of the new-look Raiders as they continue to implement significant roster and schematic changes. Below are a few observations from Raiders OTAs. He starts out with defensive line depth at the defensive tackle position. The Raiders will have to lean on their depth at defensive tackle while Christian Wilkins continues to recover. However, they are well equipped to do so. In OTAs, it was evident how much the Raiders want to prepare their other defensive tackles on the roster after drafting two defensive tackles to help solidify their interior defensive line and their ability to use Tyree Wilson on the interior if needed. The Raiders have enough sizable defensive tackles to help compensate for some of what the unit loses with Wilkins' absence. The Raiders will undoubtedly miss Wilkins as he is one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League. However, they are quietly talented at the defensive tackle position. The defensive line will be the strength of the Raiders defense with or without Wilkins. Okay, so I want to stop right there, and then by the time we wrap this whole article up, I'll throw a poll out. We should have known that the Wilkins injury rehab setback report was true the second, or some version of it was true, the second we drafted Tonka and JJ. That's all you needed to know. So now we've got Butler, Tonka, JJ. There's other people on the roster, right? That Tyree Wilson, that's mentioned here. Matthew Butler, I think, is still there. That are going to compete for these spots. And they're going Moneyball approach here, right? Not everybody can be Jason Giambi, but can you give me three players that can equate Jason Giambi's on-base percentage, batting average? You can't get Tonka Hemingway most likely to have 9.5 sacks like Christian Wilkins, but can he have 3? Can J.J. Pegues have 2? Can Adam Butler have 5.5? Can they add up to Wilkins? And I do think that's a positive, but this report also sheds a light on the idea that Christian Wilkins is just not going to be here to start week 1, which is unfortunate. And Jay Saletto says this is probably Wilkins' last year. Yeah, unless he really goes gangbusters here, it's looking less and less like that was a great signing. And again, you can't predict injury future. It is what it is. You know, sometimes these things happen. He's been a waste of a signing. All of a sudden, this guy can't stay healthy. I hear you. It's unfortunate. But that's the first takeaway from OTAs on the defensive side of the ball. So if we hop back into the article here, it goes on to talk about very little drop-off at the linebacker position, which is definitely a concern, which we've talked about. But this is a wrap-up of everything we've talked about, if you remember me saying that. Free agency made a dent in the Raiders' group of linebackers this season. Las Vegas losing Robert Spillane early in free agency left them looking to replace one of the best linebackers in the league. That's a little strong, but he's very good. However, the addition of veterans Landon Roberts and Devin White should help the Raiders solidify that position group. It will be hard for the Raiders to replace one of the NFL's leading tacklers from the past 2 seasons, which Spillane was. But assuming they stay healthy, Roberts and White should not be far off from Spillane and Diablo, who served as a defensive strength the past 2 seasons. While there will be naturally be growing pains early, the Raiders group of linebackers may be a pleasant surprise. So interesting. Ezekiel doesn't have a concern at linebacker like maybe some people in the chat do or I do. I'll say this. I do think a Landon Roberts and Devin White is a downgrade from Spillane and Divine Diablo. I know people like roasting Divine Diablo, but it's like, what's the alternative? Like, I understand, like, he's not great, but Is Devin White better than him? Like, as of right now, I would say no, he's not. And the contracts that they signed in the offseason prove that. Now, can Pete Carroll, the architect of the Legion of Legion of Boom, oh my gosh, can't speak right now, coach these guys up? And we'll talk about coaching people up in a second here with the cornerback position. But I don't think I hold Ezekiel's same confidence level in the linebacker position at this moment in time. I do think if they're going to use their post-June 1st money, which, hello, it's June 5th, let's start using it, at any position, I do think it's going to be linebacker before it's going to be cornerback. Because there haven't been any standouts rookie-wise or second-year-wise like a Lindenberg or an Eichenberg. A lot of Bergs at the linebacker position for us. Maybe like a Darian Porter, right? Or Jacorian Bennett. So right now, that is a position of concern for me. That's why Spy signed most free agent deals to one-year deals. They want to build through the draft, develop our guys. It's the right thing to do. I agree with you there. I hope we can sign one of these free agent linebackers that are still out there, like a Zaire White, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago. But as of right now, linebacker is still an area of concern, and OTAs, in my opinion, showed that, even though some people have some more optimism than I do. Raiders coaching up cornerbacks. The Raiders' biggest weakness entering this season is undoubtedly their group of cornerbacks. Veteran cornerback Jacorian Bennett may be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. However, he has failed to stay healthy long enough to prove it. The Raiders' cornerbacks will be led by Bennett, but will need the rest of their corners to step up as well. During OTAs, the Raiders coaching staff has been hard at work with their cornerbacks. Raiders coach Joe Woods could be seen at OTAs helping Bennett and the other corners with smallest issues to help them improve. Technique has been one of the unit's main focuses. While it is early and Las Vegas has only gone so far in their preparation, it is already evident that this team will be vastly different from last year's Raider team. So I do like that they mention that they're really focused on the detailed technique of the corners. That also kind of tells me that, and correct me if I'm wrong here in the comment section, they believe in their cornerbacks more than they believe in their linebackers, because it feels like, from the vibe I get from this article and from Raiders insiders, is that they like what they've seen in a Darian Porter so far. They like the idea of having Stokes and Holmes rotate as that CB2 in that corner, that nickel corner, that slot corner position, and Jacorian Bennett being their CB1. Now, we could be exposed hard with that, especially with the lack of Christian Wilkins, if these rookie defensive tackles aren't up to snuff, right? But here's what I want to ask you guys. Where are we at here? What's the biggest OTA negative? And we'll talk about positives in a second here. But as I put this poll out here, I want to hear your comments, and I want to see what you guys think about what is the worst thing to come out of OTAs. What's the thing that's most concerning? Maybe worse is a little harsh. And if anybody has that Pacers Thunder score update, I would appreciate that. We're waiting for some thunder because some lightning just hit. Okay, I'm gonna take a drink now. And there's the thunder. As of right now, I think my biggest negative, if I had to rank these in order, I actually would say that the Wilkins thing is probably third, only because of what Ezekiel mentioned in that article, that we have a lot of depth at the position. Like, with the amount of money that he's making, yeah, which is what Jay Slow said, that's an issue for sure. But in terms of like what's on the field, the linebacking position is probably my biggest area of concern, with corner taking up maybe the 2 spot. Although I don't know if I'm that concerned about the quarterback position, because I do think our front four is going to be able to generate enough pressure to kind of counteract it. And I don't think that, thank you for the OKC update. Okay, all right, they're kind of hanging around Indiana. Come on, do your best. I don't think that the Colton Miller, Jacoby Myers extension issue is an issue. I think they're both going to get signed before the season starts, to be completely honest with you. If anybody doesn't get signed, it's going to be Colton Miller, but they're probably just going to wait and see how he plays. And that's totally fine. If he holds out, then he holds out, but I don't think he's going to. We've got, flexibility, because we've got Charles Grant, who played a little left tackle. We've got DJ Glaze, who can maybe stick there. Thayer Mumford is interesting as a backup. So we've got people that can replace Colton Miller if he holds out, but he's not going to hold out. He'll sign. And Jacoby Myers will sign as well. So while I agree with you that our biggest negatives is probably Wilkins or the linebacking depth, I do think linebacking depth is probably my biggest concern, because I do think Wilkins is going to play this year. It's just a matter of when. I would imagine he's going to be back before the bye week, which is crazy for me to say because we didn't think that was a possibility. It is what it is. So I'm going to close this right here. If you're watching After the Fact on YouTube, let me know what you think. Linebacker is going to hurt, especially in coverage. Yeah, no doubt. We couldn't fix all the positions in 1 year. They will see how the linebackers and cornerbacks play out this year, and it'll be our top priority next year. Yeah, that's another good point. It's not just going to flip the switch overnight. Like the Commanders hitting on Jaden Daniels is not what we did. We had to make sure that we found a quarterback and that we extended Max and that we hit on the running back situation and figure out what we're doing at wide receiver too. And we did all that. But you can't have this like magic wand hand wave and everything is just perfect, which is why you have concerns going into the offseason. If we didn't have any concerns, I would have just predicted us to go 17-0. My prediction video is live. No spoilers, but I have us winning a lot of games and losing a lot of games and being somewhere around 500. And I think that's what the concerns will show you is that we're probably a 500 team right now, which that can maybe overachieve if some of these rookies play a little better than we think. But let's talk about some of these rookies and some of the positives that come out of the OTAs, especially with Mad Max talking on his podcast, which is a wonderful podcast. Rush is what it's called. Max Crosby names under the radar rookies that have been standing out at OTAs. The Las Vegas and this is Jaleel Granberry. Las Vegas Raiders have a promising 2025 rookie class, and one first-year player is already catching the eye of Raiders star defender Max Crosby. Any guesses as to who he could be talking about? Put them in the chat before I get there. The Raiders put an exclamation point on their impressive offseason of change with the promising 2025 draft class, headlined by 6th overall pick Ashton Jeanty. Vegas addressed both sides of the ball with its 11 picks and likely found some immediate contributors. With new guys already on the field with vets during OTAs, it didn't take them long to impress their new teammates. On a recent episode of the Rush podcast, star defender Max Crosby talked about how excited he was for the Raiders rookie class and how they already looked good. When asked which newcomers have genuinely impressed him, the veteran edge defender named a couple rookies that have been flying under the radar. Naturally, and we talked about one of these guys already, he started with a defensive selection first, praising cornerback Darian Porter. Did not talk about him. On offense, Crosby highlighted wide receiver Dante Thornton Jr., detailing his impressive size and athleticism, even comparing him to Martavis Bryant. And I appreciate that because Martavis, when he was good, was an elite athlete who can fly down the field and make plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't make any plays for us, but it is what it is. A Martavis Bryant comparison may not mean much for a casual fan, but Bryant was a speedy receiver with a knack for big plays during his short NFL career. Thornton is some of the same archetype. Drafted in the 4th round, he measured 6'5", 205 pounds, and ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. The more I hear about how good he's doing in OTAs, the more it makes me think this could be our DK Metcalf. Everybody overthought DK Metcalf. It seems like everybody might have overthought Dante Thornton as well. If that size and athleticism can translate to him making plays on the field, there is a spot for him to immediately contribute. The wide receiver unit is still a concern for the Raiders, and that's why rookies like Thornton and Jack Besh can immediately carve out roles for themselves. With Brock Bowers still at the tight end and Jeanty now in the backfield, this is a young offense that can make some noise for years. Darian Porter, on the other hand, is exactly the kind of corner you think about when you think about a Pete Carroll defensive back, from Richard Sherman to Tariq Woolen. The head coach has always loved rangy corners, and that's exactly what Porter is at 6'3", 195. He also ran a 4.3. He could help contribute to a secondary that is also hoping to add Jalen Ramsey. Where'd that come from? Is that a sneaky like breaking news? We're in on Jalen Ramsey? I'm not reporting that. That's what Just Blog Baby is saying. That's interesting. I don't know if Jalen Ramsey's that type of guy that they want, but we'll see. So look, I was heavily concerned about the wide receiver room coming into the draft, because we didn't sign anybody in free agency. But drafting Jack Besh, who has a high floor, and drafting Dante Thornton, who has a high ceiling, and hearing that both of them are playing as advertised, if not better so far, is huge, is absolutely huge. And the idea that Dante Thornton is catching the eyes of Jacoby Myers, Max Crosby, Pete Carroll, the more I think about him in the offense, the more I am worried that Trey Tucker might fall out of the rotation here. And Trey Tucker's not terrible, but Dante Thornton is like as fast as him, and he's 6'5". That's a huge person, and that's a very fast person. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Ashton Jeanty. He's been as advertised. We talked a lot about Pete Carroll. Oh, he's too old. Look at him. Every time he's out there in 100-degree weather with a long-sleeve shirt on and gloves, running around faster than me and you could ever. So here's what I ask of you guys. We talked about the biggest OTA negatives. Let's talk about the biggest OTA positives. Is it the emergence of the wide receivers, the rookie wide receivers, Jack Besh and Dante Thornton? Is it Ashton Genty's praise? Is it Pete Carroll's energy? Or is it anything else that you guys want to talk about? Oh, Pete Carroll's energy. I didn't expect that. I thought, Besh and Thornton would run away with this thing. But I want to hear, this is your show as much as it is my show. So talk to me. Talk to me. Believe in the plan. This front office has brought in vets in the linebacking group with a good mix of some young guys. I'm sure Pete will lean on the vets early in the year and slowly bring some of the younger guys along. Maybe. I mean, Pete Carroll has set the precedent in every area of football that he's been in, whether it was the Patriots, whether it was the Seahawks, whether it was, USC, excuse me. He'll play the youngest guy on the field if he's the best guy. But I do believe he's going to lean on a lot of the vets, like Geno Smith, of course. I'm sure they like some of the younger guys on this team. Not bringing in anyone at that point or at this point could be a good thing. They obviously like what they see so far. And I love what I'm hearing so far. And to wrap this all up here for the last 5 minutes or so, I just think, do I want to say this? Do I want to say the classic thing that every Raider fan always says? It does feel different. Now, we say that every year because it quite literally does feel different. We said that about Josh McDaniels. We said that about Antonio Pierce. And now we're saying it about Pete Carroll. But what I want to drive home here to everybody watching that might feel a little reservation to say that it does feel different, even though that might be what you're thinking, is that it feels different because it does, but also because the people that are making it feel different have had success at the positions that they are hired for in the past at the highest level. Josh McDaniels and Antonio Pierce had success at the positional coordinator coaching level. They got upgraded and crashed and burned. Maybe Antonio Pierce didn't get a fair shake, but it is what it is. That's the reality situation. Pete Carroll has had success at the head coaching position. He's not now the general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's at the same position that he already had success at. Chip Kelly has not had a lot of success as a head coach, but he's had success at offensive coordinator. And that's what he is right now. He's not the head coach. Patrick Graham has had success at DC, and he's the DC. That's why I think it's okay to say that this time it does feel different. And it's because these guys have done it at the highest level, at the positions they are currently working at now. The only person to have a little bit of reservations on is John Spytek. But the draft class that we had are all guys that we love before the draft that seem to be playing at a high level so far. So if this draft class doesn't end up being the draft class we think it could be, it's going to fall back on us too, because we were like, God, this is really good, which is what John Spytek thought. It's not as if he took a bunch of flyers on Cleveland Furrows and Damon Arnett's and it ended up being bad, right? None of us thought those were good picks, and they ended up not being good picks. We all think Ashton Genty's going to be a good player. If he's not a good player, we're going to blame John Spytek for that? That's a good value positional pick. And he's the only one that's got to prove himself at this point, and I think so far he has. So what do we got here? Pete is a great cheerleader. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. It's different because there is obviously a plan in place. Whether it works out or not remains to be seen, but there is a plan. Just look at all the big-time front office signings we have made. The plan is in place. The pieces are in place now. You're preaching, man. You're preaching to the choir, and I couldn't think of a better way to end this thing. So look, we survived whatever's happening outside my window, the tsunami tornado action that's going on. I'm going to wrap this up here so it doesn't cut out and my power gets lost. The front office guys we brought in are just as important as any player we could have brought in. Yeah, we brought in a bunch of guys from the Eagles too, from Tampa Bay. Like, I'm excited about the direction of this team. I think OTAs, we wrapped it up perfectly here. Oh, Moten. It is different with head coach Carroll and OC Chip Kelly. The resumes, enough said. Mo, we got to get in contact somehow. How do we do this? Go to my YouTube channel, ALLaBorde Raiders, and I think in either the description of the videos or on my channel, there's my email address. Hit me up so we could do one of these together. That'd be sick. But shout out to Mo Moten. We'll see you Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Perfect time to wrap this up. Thank God I didn't get out of here a little early. Go hit me up, Mo. I wanna set something up. We can do something together. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this stream. Whether you're watching on Bleach Report, thank you so much for voting in the polls and keeping the chat going. If you're watching after the fact on my YouTube channel, hit that like button, comment away, and please be sure to subscribe. It is free after all, no charges to you. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.